especial y todos podremos disfrutar de una muestra de las ricas y hermosas tradiciones de la República de Panamá. Agradecemos nuevamente a Yosen Premium, gran patrocinador de Panama Maritime XIII. Igualmente, les recordamos que es muy importante que se anoten en el puesto de registro si desean asistir a la gira técnica a la ampliación del canal en las esclusas de Cocolí el miércoles 15 de marzo, por cortesía de Manzanillo International Terminal. Los buses saldrán del Hard Rock Hotel a las 9 de la mañana. El siguiente bloque de conferencias corresponde al segmento Shipping Looking Forward to Growth Opportunities. Los cadetes en los pasillos, vestidos de blanco, tienen hojas a su disposición para anotar preguntas. Por favor, háganlas en el desarrollo de las presentaciones. Las iremos recibiendo a lo largo de ellas y al final tendremos la sesión de preguntas y respuestas. Nuestro primer orador es el señor Ravi Mehrotra, con su ponencia Fourth Industrial Revolution and How It Will Affect the Future of Shipping. A marine engineer by profession, Ravi Mehrotra runs his own shipping company, Foresight Limited in London, since 1984. Mr. Mehrotra's initial business was shipping, but it expanded to oil drilling industry. Mr. Mehrotra, over a period of 3 decades, has developed Foresight, Halworthy, whose operation includes jackup offshore rig building, drilling, workover, and turnkey contracts, delivering value through cost-effective operations. Since 1994, he has been a member of Lloyd's Register of Shipping Committee. He is on the committees of American Bureau of Shipping and Det Norske Veritas of Norway. In recognition of his services to the shipping industry, he was awarded in 2006 an honorary CBE, Commander of British Empire, by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Mr. Ravi Mehrotra is also a director of the Commonwealth Business Council, as well as chairman for Europe-India Chamber of Commerce, headquarters at the European Union, Brussels. He is also a regular speaker at international conferences approximately 6 times a year, and a visiting professor at the Cambridge University, Academy of Transport. He holds the key to the City of London, Freeman, which means he can establish in his own name various businesses. On 30th September 2014, Ravi Mehrotra was awarded Lloyd's List Lifetime Achievement Award for his contribution to the maritime industry. Please welcome Ravi.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Ms. Dr. Roy, for giving so explicitly my background. I can prove my own CV after hearing you. Huh? Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. So then I don't have to use this. Your Excellency Kitakliam and my friends, ladies and gentlemen, I have a very unusual presentation today, and I hope you will bear with me. But before I start my presentation, I would like to tell you a few things. First thing, my reputation has already reached Panama, although it is my first visit. And they have selected my slot after the coffee and before the lunch. So I'm sorry I'll not be able to give you a power nap of 20 minutes. So I'm sorry about that. And otherwise, I'm quite used to helping people to get this power nap. And as she mentioned already, that I am a visiting professor at the Cambridge University, so I have a requirement from my audience. I need a very reciprocative and attentive audience who can participate while I am speaking. This is my two requirement. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you permit me, I'll start my presentation. Can anyone tell me what is the fourth industrial revolution? Anyone? You have any idea what is the fourth industrial revolution? I will let you know. After the industrial revolution of hydraulic steam, and diesel engine, and then internet came. These are the four revolutions which our society, the world society has gone through. This has taken 250 years. So over the 250 years, we have developed the way of living. Are you with me? Because this is how we have grown. And now, the cyber system, the fourth industrial revolution is coming, and that develops disruption, because the way we were living for 250 years now is totally, slowly you have to change it to something totally different. Fourth industrial revolution is presently taking place based on digital, nanotechnologies, robotics, artificial intelligence, and 3D printing, and few more areas at present. All this will affect the way we live and, of course, the way we run our shipping companies. That is where is our main point. This will also be life-changing and disruptive to the existing way of doing things for the last 250 years. Like all previous industrial revolutions, this will also have a slow interface. It doesn't overnight, doesn't shift. Slow interface with the present, maybe a few decades as happened between the steam to diesel engine. How many of you remember between the steam and diesel engine, how long it took? Can anyone tell me? It took almost 30 years to change fully from steam to diesel. So this is what creates the slow interface between this. But one thing is certain, that the upside in industrial manufacturing and shipping as we know it is slowly, is reducing. So the growth of manufacturing as we know it and the growth in shipping as we know it is now reducing, because shipping is nothing but carrying a volume, and volume is reducing because you don't need it. I'll tell you why. The current low growth in the shipping for the last 8 years, even after lowering of oil prices over the last 2 years, are an example of this decline. Since the 2008 financial crisis, shipping has not moved anywhere. It is stagnant. We can blame anything, but it is stagnant. It's basically because the upside in shipping is not there anymore with the current way of running. The main objective of the fourth industrial revolution is to lower the cost of labor and energy. Now I will show you what are these four industrial revolutions. The first one is definitely the water power and then steam power. The second one is assembly line and development of electricity. This is the time when the Panama also had, you built a railway, transcontinental railway line. It was one of the very first in the, do you know? Anyone can tell me what it was? The railway line, transcontinental railway from Cologne to Panama City. So that was during the second revolution when the steam came. The third is computer and automation. So here, the main issue is changes the fundamentals of global supply chain. Because every time anything changes has taken place in these four industrial revolutions, you will say the first three revolutions, you will see it changes the fundamental of transportation. So, anyone has any view or anything on this? Okay, now then I go to the next point. Drivers of the past and current shipping market. Shipping is not an industry, it is purely a service sector. That's the mistake we did all the time, thinking shipping industry. We do not exist on our own. We have to have somebody's cargo to carry it. So shipping is a service sector, it's not an industry. It needs agriculture produce or mining produce to be transported to the consuming centers. It needs industrial produce to be transported to deficient areas or expensive economic areas of consumption. It needs fossil fuels to be transported to refineries and then transport refined products to the consuming centers. It needs to transport hydrocarbon gases and various industrial gases, and then they are produced to consuming centers. This is more or less the world of shipping as we know it today, apart from the cruise shipping, laser, and offshore shipping for hydrocarbon extraction. Before we look at these sectors in shipping, it is better to study the current world economic situation. Also, we should examine where we are today in shipping before making any presumptions. Are you with me on this? You're very quiet. Huh? Okay, so next one. You see, this is the economic projections for the number of years. And there is hardly any growth. So as we know, over the last 250 years, it was only the increase in the production and consumers. But today, we are seeing the last 8 years already, and next 7, 8 years also, there will not be any much growth in it. And this is one of the reasons why even the oil prices are more or less remains stagnant to this. Can anyone tell me why oil prices are stagnant? It is again the fourth industrial revolution. Today we had a theory, my friend John will tell us here. We used to tell peak oil. Am I right or no? There is no more there. There is sufficient oil. The nature is creating continuously. It is only how we extract it. And the technological change has brought us that today there is a surplus oil you can extract. If the prices goes up, they will go to deep water and extract the oil there. So the upside in oil is also gone, unless it may be hiccups in between, unless somebody announces something has gone wrong or something has happened in Saudi Arabia. So, okay, the price will go up. But those are hiccups. But general trend is that this is upside is gone. We have to survive on this. And why I have brought this volume, world trade in volume, because shipping deals only in volume. We carry in a space the cargo. So it is very important to know how much world trade will, how much volume of the world trade will be there. Now this is the projection, they have made it. But now there's a thinking that there may be a further slowdown. As such, it was not very high, because generally 7 to 8% volume growth must take place for shipping to survive. It is only showing at 2 or 3%. But now, the effect of fourth industrial revolution will have a further dip in it. So the volume growth is not there. This is what this chart presents you. Are you with me on this? Then I show you another slide. This is how the world seaborne trade was increasing. And we went, ship owners like me also went and spent millions of dollars to develop the fleet. But see the effect. The red part of it shows the China effect. But after that, everyone assumed that China will keep on growing. But reality is we are going to have minus 2%. Can you see that? So this is where the world economy and the seaborne imports will reduce. So now, what do the previous 3 slides tell us about world GDP growth and volume of goods growth, volume of goods in the world trade? Can anyone tell me what the previous 3 slides which I showed you tells you? Until recently, we looked at world GDP growth and its volume growth to find our clue for the future growth in shipping, and spent hundreds of millions of dollars in this belief to run our shipping business and hope of making millions. We were living in our own shipping cocoon, shipping industries, without looking at the outside world and how it is changing around us. From 2008 financial crisis until 2016, shipping has not revived. We kept on blaming the excess shipbuilding capacity and private equity for unbalanced supply and demand curve. You agree? We have kept on blaming everyone else, but except looking at our own self, what we are doing. It is only in mid-2016 we started looking at the outside world to see if some other answers were there. Before we discuss this, let's look at the shipping itself and where we are today. I want to show you another damaging chart. For the first time in our known history, the world fleet is younger than ever. We never had such younger fleet as we have today. The 65% of the world fleet is less than 10-year-old. Even if we take 20-year average life of the ship, we have to live with this fleet for the next 10 years. So this is the excess behind us. We have to carry whatever we want to do in the future. So this is quite an important chart for you to have. Does anyone has any question or answer on it? Existing world merchant fleet, supply, demand, and utilization. You see, supply and demand are way ahead, whereas utilization is less than 80% of the ships. So hence, we are always running our shipping fleet with overhang capacity. We have to manage our fleet with this point in our face. For the future of shipping, excess supply of this is the challenge resulting in low utilization of fleet. The previous 3 slides tells us that we are underutilizing our fleet. Utilization is only 80%, as I showed you the graph. Thereby, our capital employed in shipping is underutilized and results in low or negative returns in the industry. Similar to the world economy, where negative returns are becoming the norms of the day. You put money in the bank, and next year you will get back less, and also you have to face the erosion of the purchasing power. So we are living in a world where erosion of our capabilities and capacity is reducing. And why it is happening, I will come back to that. Now, this chart I want to show you quite an important. It will come in the future use, but this is quite important. The blue line which you see is the South Korean consumption per head in the country. These are considered the 4 factors which determine whether a nation is developed, underdeveloped, or developing. These 4. How much consumption of steel, electricity, crude oil, or natural gas per person per year we are using it. So we have not compared with America and Germany. We have compared with the South Korea, which is the lowest industrialized country among all these. And you will see India and Indonesia are just at the bottom. They're scraping the bottom. So this is where I'm trying to come and tell you, I'll come back why I have shown you this chart. Here, there is a possibility that India and Indonesia may decide to grow their economies to uplift their poor. This is not only a possibility, but a certainty. The 2 countries will certainly push for uplift of the poor for urbanization, by urbanization of their population. This will give boom to local industrial production, but one has to see how much will it affect the ton mile of the world shipping. So why I showed you this chart, the whole idea was to know that these 2 countries, one has 1.3 billion people, the other has nearly 250 million people. These will grow. But how much will it affect the international shipping? That is where we are all concerned with it. Dumping of cheap industrial goods into the developed world is over. China had the last opportunity when Europe and USA had their majority population below 65 years. The 65-plus year age group of the Western world and Japan has less consumption of goods but more need of services such as medical, health, travel, and behavioral sciences. So the whole issue is these developed world, majority has become 65-plus year of age. So their consumption is reducing. And they cannot consume. So how the shipping will grow? Now see another slide. Seaborne import used to rise by 3.7% between 2000 to 2015. Now it is expected it will be only 1.2% growth. That means there is a growth, but very little. Over the years, the shipping is now declining. The volume of the trade is declining. So this is quite an important chart for you all to see. And this is the reason why you see the last 8 years, the freight rates or charter rate have not gone anywhere. You see, there is a hiccups in between, little bit, any news item or other, but more or less they have remained stagnant. So this is the... So what do we expect in shipping between 2017 and 30? Anyone has any clue? We have seen in the last two slides that rates in the last 7 years have been remained lackluster and below break-even points. So the question is, why is this happening? Any idea? Here are few possible answers. So I will come to the answers because my boss is telling time is up. But she is telling, don't worry. Okay. Population growth rate of the world has come down. It expanded 2% up to 1990, but slowed down to 1.25% till 2016. And is still slowing down and may start declining world population from 2040 onwards. This will also have effect because we will reduce the consumption when the population is not growing. 65 plus years age group of the developed world has peaked its consumption of industrial goods. Now it needs more services than the goods. China will become the world's largest consumer market till the majority population of China also reaches 65 plus. So it will shift from America. I don't know where the CEO of the Suez Canal, or the Panama Canal, but this is shifting. It will become the China. Population, its disposable income is rising further from the present US dollar 8,500 and expected to reach 12,000 per head of GDP by 2022. So instead of Western world, this is important for youth, Western world, China will become the major importing center for ships cargo. This will have negative effect for international shipping. Ton-mile distance of shipping from India and Indonesia, if they grow, to China is less instead of from China to Europe and USA, as was the case of shipping boom of 2003 to 2008. So that is where my purpose was to tell you that shipping, growing India and Indonesia will not impact the world shipping that much. The fourth industrial revolution, which is taking place right now, requires us to relook at the shipping and how we manage it. The shipping going to be part of the supply chain system or independent shipping companies trying to make money out of that, as we are doing it today. So we have to become a part of the supply chain system. Industrial growth of China has hastened the fourth industrial revolution on us. My question is why? Any answers? Western and developed world suddenly face large unemployment after the 2008 financial crisis, and hence the industrial innovation gained speed. The aim of this innovation was to bring back the jobs which were lost to China. Innovation of digital, robotic, and 3D printing took main grounds to see how to minimize the effect of cheap labor in distant countries. Will this bring the jobs back? My question to you, anyone can answer that? Unlikely, as innovation has no limitations. So you cannot say, I only want to innovate up to here. It has no innovation limits. But in the process, we have created another issue: how to finance the increased leisure time of the developed world population. Recently, in the Swiss parliament, there was a vote on giving free wages to each Swiss person. Luckily, it was voted out. But for how long? It is very difficult to conclude a dialogue when you are the messenger of doomsday in shipping. You agree? Huh? But as everyone says, shipping is the second oldest industry. I do not have to elaborate on the first one, as everyone in the audience is grown up and knows very well. And also my wife is sitting here, so I keep quiet about it, okay? So as the oldest industry survived and thrived even after draconian laws were imposed on them, but internet has helped it to grow. So ladies and gentlemen, so there is no reason why the second oldest industry, shipping, will not survive, as in the industry, it has an additional bonus. And what is that? The romance. The romance of the sea, the sailor, and the ship will enable it to survive and find its own niche. So I am now at the conclusion. So my friends, once you enter shipping, either you love it or hate it. What you expect of me, who has been in it since 1960? One has to find romance in it and immerse oneself. Passion will find the answer how to survive. It may be we tried to make an industry out of shipping, which is a service sector, and failed. Now we have to go back to what it used to be: adventure, romance, in order to survive in shipping. The shipping industry is already planning on how to plug in this fourth industrial revolution and make a transition, as we did earlier, from steamships to diesel engine. And we may try to become a link in the global transport system. Do you have any better suggestion? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me patiently. Any questions?
I think we all share the love for shipping that Ravi has explained to us today through all the challenges, although all the challenges we have to face. I remind you that we have two assistants dressed in white at both sides of the conference room to receive your questions. Please send them to us along the presentation so that we can read them at the end of this panel. Our next speaker is Jens Small Jorgensen. He will share with us his vision on shipping and bunkering overview 2017 and onwards. Jens attended business school from 1989-1990, starting as a trainee for Fisker Bom, shipbrokers in Denmark from 1990 until 1992. Here he worked with forwarding agencies and chartering. In 1992, he moved to Outdoor Shipping AS, working again in operations, chartering, and agency for 4 years. Following this, he started working for MADAC, Maritime Agency Bunkers AS, part of the OW Group, until 2003. For the next 4 years, Jens became a bunker manager for the Armada Group, moving on to this current position in 2007 as the director of the Bunker Department and Risk Management at Aldendorf Carriers, GmbH and Company. Jens Moll just stepped down as chairman for IBA, where he served as board member since 2010 and as chairman since 2014. Jens has been a regular speaker in the event circuit, particularly at SIPCON, the last 5 times and for the 6th time last year. And about Aldendorf, Aldendorf Carriers is a family-owned shipping company specialized in bulk cargo, unitized cargo, and partial trades, and the biggest one in the world. The fleet consists in the Handysize to Newcastlemax range. The company currently has a new building program of about 50 eco bulk carriers recently delivered or under construction. Aldendorf normally operates over 600 ships. Please welcome Jens.
Very good. Very good. Me? So, okay, thank you very much. I will try to do my presentation in a different way. I was asked to do a presentation about shipping and the bunkering future trends. And I must say that it's difficult to do that in 20 minutes. But I will try to do it short. And I really hope that if anybody have any questions, then write them down, ask the QA or afterwards. So, as mentioned, the Aldendorf is a fully owned company, 95 years old. And we have, correct to say it, more than 600 vessels. Last year in January, we reached the 500 levels. And this year we reached 630. I will come back to that later. Office, yes, correct. We are one of the largest, if not we are the largest ship owner and dry bulk operator in the world. And to have that, we need to have office. So we are up to 18 offices now around the world. Who knows? Middle of America, I don't know. So, correct mention, eco vessels. We had one of the largest new build order or program in the last couple of years. We still have a lot of new builds to come, that the market is still attractive. As you can see is that we have been talking about crisis in shipping and etc., but I don't think there is any crisis in shipping. It's just because people have different positions. Because a crisis for me is that something is not there. But we have never seen so much cargo for, so and that's also why we, Aldendorf, have been able to grow. If you're looking back in the 1980s, we only have 28 vessels, and we ended up in 1st Jan in 2016 to have 500 vessels in our fleet. What we also are famous for is that the last 10 years we have grown our transshipment. A lot of people do not know that we are one of the largest transshipment operators in the world. And lately, we have opened a transshipment in Trinidad, which have been a great success. And there are 2 more projects to come in the next years. So we will definitely grow in that segment. So, just to show out our fleet, based on the 1st of March, we have today 630 vessels in our fleet and a total deadweight of 51 tons. So we have a few percentage of the market. What is quite interesting is that the average age is less than 8 years. And it's also because we have a future here. I don't want to talk too much about bunkers, because then we will only be finished this evening. But again, it is, of course, with a fleet of 630 vessels, we also need to have a bunker desk. We're not just a 2-person desk who just want to buy some bunkers, etc. We need to be professional here. So we have desk of more than 13 people to controlling 630 vessels, and we will still grow. Last year was a record in Aldendorf. First of all, we never had so many new builds. Number 2, our volume in bunkers reached to 2.7 million tons. That volume could easily have been much higher, But because we are slow steaming and because we are operating eco vessels, we see the impact. And we did not have any eco vessels and a slow steaming, this volume will be 1 million tons more. So it's just again confirming that the new design of the eco vessel is a success. We are saving tons here. And it's just again showing the growth the last 4 years, and then last year 2.7 million tons. Volume-wise, this slide is just showing, and it's also what I will come back to later on the dry bulk segment, is where is it? Where is the dry bulk operating here? And there's no doubt that is the Far East because of the growth in China and India and etc. But definitely Singapore is the main hub in bunkers. And we last year reached, as one of the biggest one there, a single buyer, more than 1 million tons, which was counted to 950 supplies in Singapore. So it means it counted, we have 3 vessels every day in average in Singapore. Russia, China, there's no discussion there because China is the main importer of coal and iron ore. And then we have the Middle East, which is growing, and etc., and North Europe. But Panama is not there, sadly. So, our trade, that's what I'm here for. And there's no doubt, in the dry bulk sector, is the majority of cargo is different ores, iron ore, and then the coal is there. So, whatsoever, if we will see in the future, which we believe, any decline in iron ore, or different ores, or any kind of coal, we will also see a decrease in the seaborne volumes. There's no doubt. The other items like grain, bauxite, fertilizer, etc., is still a lot, but it's not the same amount like the iron ores and coal. And if you look at Oldendorff trade, this is a very, very correct picture of the dry bulk market. If you're looking at a little bit on the Atlantic to Pacific, is a growing market. Inter-Atlantic, growing market, still. Pacific to Atlantic, but Inter-Pacific is where everything happened. From Australia, Indonesia, India, and then to China. And we have been growing heavily, and last year was a record of 147 million tons just in Inter-Pacific. It's also showing about the bunker purchase that our main port, Singapore, that's the reason for that. Good. The outlook. What happened last year? A lot of people were saying, wow, we are at the all-time high and all-time low, and suddenly we saw the coal prices. Yes, but where did it came from? It came from the bottom. And of course, when we see the high commodities, then of course the bias is also there. So again, yes, we saw a period of freight increasing last year on coal and iron ore, and it was simply because of stockpiling in China. They have changed the working hours and etc. But we will see a decline in the world on global steel production. There's no doubt. It cannot continue. We have seen a heavy growth in many years, but we will see a decline. We're expecting about 0.6% decline over the next 5 years. Another thing is also China. I don't want to go in details here, but China have learned something. They cannot just grow and grow and grow and not looking on the environmental. And we all have seen the television, etc., that the people cannot see each other when they're walking around in Beijing streets, etc. So they have to do something. And one of the things they have decided in China is to reduce the steel production. And they have done it successfully. Very surprised. When we heard about it first time years back, we were saying, yeah, it's maybe a PR stunt. But they're really doing a good job in China, and they will still continue, and they're hard on it. So this is just confirming this is fact. They have cut the steel production, and that's it, and they will do more in the future. But what will China then do? Of course, the property is declining in China. And when the property is declining, they don't need steel. The infrastructure, yes. The railway, they need to have railways, lines, and etc. So that will increase, but it's not the same amount than the property. Machinery, they're declining a lot. about 4.5% at the moment. But the auto, of course, 0.8, but this is the domestic, this is China built, and they're increasing. But it's still overall, it do not conclude to an increase, but it will be a decline. What else? What is the future plan? They will have energy, clean energy. So the nuclear, what they expect is, over the next 5 years, 11% on nuclear. On the solar, which is the biggest, will be about 16%. On wind power, they're expecting up to 6%, and the hydro, about 3.8%. If you put all that together, and then you take on the coal, which they have been imported, that will have an impact on the coal import to China. And here again is showing that one of the other reasons for coal is also that they're getting better to get the power station to the mines, or even the mines was not good enough, they will then close the mines and etc. So they will try to optimize their own production and then move the power station there. India was 10 years back, everybody was talking about India, that they will import huge amount of coal, and they did it. They reached it in 2015, 160 million tons. But since they have declining the import, and why is simple? Because that the Indians have been so good to optimize their own coal production. And therefore, the future trend in India is they will do less import of coal. Europe is over, I would say, on the coal import. It was in the good old days, UK and Germany, etc., were importing a lot, but it's really declining, and we do not really see anything in the future. There will be a minus this year, means that they are under growth, there will be no growth on coal to Europe. So they will be a minor country. There are, of course, some countries who have some growth, and of course also have an impact on the coal, but it's still only a few million tons compared to China and India and etc. So the dry bulk market, what will have an impact? In the good old days, we were coming from the BDI below 1,000. This chart is showing from 2000, and then we have the peak when the China was peak and etc. in 2007, and then since have been sliding. But one thing, what I was saying before, it was the cargo. Do we have a crisis? No, because the cargo have been growing the last 5 years more than 4% every year. But the case is that the fleet have been growing 9% per year. Another thing, what about the future? We can always discuss the future. We still believe that we will not see the good old days. There will be many, many years to go. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But one indicator is also, if you look at the forward curve from BDI, which is the dry bulk, and it is that if you want to hedge or have a time charter of Capesize, the freight is still flat going forward. So we do not coming back to the 106,000 we saw for 10 years ago. So what about scrapping? Everybody talking about scrapping. Oh, the market is bad, we have to scrap vessels. Yes, and the activity have been high, but will that continue? Are there any more vessels to scrap? Because the fleet getting younger and younger. And we have seen is that when the freight are reaching, I would say, all-time low, then we're suddenly the scrapping increasing. But now we are still flat, but the scrapping declining this year because the fleet is so young. And then we have been earlier mentioned the fleet age, and it's correct. In the dry bulk, we mentioned before that the world fleet globally is about 60% of world fleet was below 10 years. In the dry bulk is 73% that are below 10 years. So that means that the next at least 5 to 10 years, those vessels will still be there. Plus, there will still be a continuing natural order or new builds to come. And if you see the fleet growth, I don't know if you all can see the small details here, the small figures. is that every year going forward, we will see a net fleet increase, in average about 1.1%. But it's a lot if you take 1.1% of the total fleet. And especially if you take 2021, we still see a growth. So, Panama Canal. I don't want to go much in details, that have been said too lot, but I just want to show a little bit. This is the figures from the websites. And as we saw, a huge increase in 2016. And what we are in Oldendorf is saying with the new locks, etc., is we can only say congratulations to Panama, because you have been doing something good stuff. And definitely, this is something we like in our business, and etc., and it's working. And I understand that every month you are making a new record, so well done. But what is about the dry bulk? It's quite interesting, is I always hear about the containers lines, etc. But if you will see a little bit just from the Atlantic to Pacific, there's one of the main products is grain. I didn't knew that when I was, before we look into it. And then, of course, the chemical products from US Gulf and down, and the containers. But of course, the other way around, and it's again from China and etc. You come from Pacific to land, then it's container taking over, but then we have iron ore and metals, which is only a few part of it. It was quite interesting. On the dry bulk vessels, north and southbound, is quite steady. Will it increase? It will be difficult to say because it's a purely calculation. There was one guy this morning was saying that there are some statistics showing that dry bulk is below the expectation. And my reply to that is very simple. If you have a calculator, then it's up to you own guys, because it's a matter of cost. Dry bulk vessel is not like in the good old days where you have a time frame where you have to full speed ahead. We are in eco speed and we can calculate, and if it's economic correct to go south or go other and avoid the canal, then it's just a matter of money, then we do it. So again, is it cost-wise? Is the running cost like bunker prices, etc., which is the majority of the freight in dry bulk today, and the cost, then is that counting? One thing I just want to show with that slide is that on the black figures you see there is the cape size. So we're using it. So that's good. So, bunker sales, Panama have increased. It's perfect. But what about going future? Looking forward, the increase of demand for gas oil, especially when we're reaching 2020. And this, I don't want to, sometimes I'm a little bit famous to be a little bit too direct and be negative, etc. And I will try to behave myself here, but I have to show this one here. I must say. This is an inquiry of 60 tons here for a while ago, when we went to the American market. I mentioned Houston, Texas, but it's an average. It's Norfolk, it's Port Arthur, etc. So 60 tons for us, if we want 60 tons, cost 33,000. It means 561 tons delivered. The same 60 tons, we want to take that in Panama. We have to pay 721. And what is the reason? It's because you have a very, very high barging. I don't want to go into details and why you have high barging, etc. But I just think that maybe to turn a little bit around, the Americans had the same for years back when they have high barging on all the product. And then it turned a little bit around to have the distillate, to have a delivered price where they have smaller barges or even tank trucks. I know it's a problem here with tank trucks. But again is, just think about it, because it is a high volume. So look a little bit forward. What will the demand be if a ship owner still have to calculate with almost, it's a little bit unfair to say $150 different, because it's only based on 60 tons, but in the future we want to take 200 tons, then there still will be a huge difference because of your high barging. So think about that in the future. If you want to increase your volume on the distillate, which will increase, then if you want to have a part of it, you have to do something with it. But again, is your policy is Panama. So, IMO Global, and of course our lovely General Secretary is not here, so I will not go straight after him about my view on it. But again, IMO, I would say that I have been mentioned that life changes, and there's no doubt that if anybody in this world are changing our life in shipping, then it's IMO. And they're very good at it. But it's not always we agree to them, I must say, and a lot of reason for that. But whatsoever, the global cap, I don't want to go in details with that one, just that there are some costs involved. And I don't think that IMO really have been looking on the calculator or have been speaking to shipping people about the future until 2020, but it's more about the cost here. And this is just annually from February from Wood Mackenzie. And I am 100% sure it will not be the last report we will see on the future cost because of the global gap. There are no doubt, and I fully agree with the different environmental authorities in the world, that you cannot put a price on the environmental. But anyway, there will be a cost. And I may be a little bit afraid maybe it will be higher than 60 billion. What else do we have? So to come to 2020, LNG, no doubt this is one of the cleanest products, etc. But for dry bulk, I must say I don't believe in it. Because costly to retrofit, space-wise, and availability. We have to remember we're calling about 2,000 different ports, and the volume, and etc. So for dry bulk, I cannot see any LNG, but I can see it for container lines, cruises lines, and I support that. So please continue. It's a clean product, it's a future, but it takes time to get it into shipping. There is no doubt. Scrubbers. This is where I would say, if anything the dry bulk should do, then it's something like scrubbers. Because we have space on board for that. We can do it retrofit, we can do it for dry docking, and it's quite easy. But again, of course, I don't want to go in details about the cost and etc. But again, the biggest issue here on the scrubbers will be, will we have enough fuel oil? So this is a purely communication between buyers and suppliers to have supply guaranteed going forward. Gas oil, no doubt, there will be gas oil around the world. In every port there is a tugboat, there is a gas oil, so therefore there will be gas oil. The problem will only be, will it be enough in the different ports, and etc. And then the final note is that communication is the key, and we have to start now. Thank you very much. It was 20 minutes. Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much. Great job. Hola, ahora sí. Agradecemos la presentación de Jens. Si tienen preguntas, los cadetes no han recibido. Recuerden, si surgen preguntas, favor entregarlas a los cadetes para que las hagan llegar al podio. Nuestro siguiente orador es nuestro amigo Tomás Ávila Manzanares, quien hará una presentación sobre The Role of the Modern Flag State Registry in the Economy. Tomás Ávila es un abogado panameño, graduado de la Facultad de Derecho y Ciencias Políticas de la Universidad de Panamá y posee un posgrado en Derecho Público y una maestría en Derecho Comercial de la Universidad Latinoamericana de Ciencia y Tecnología. Tomás tiene cerca de 25 años de ejercer la abogacía. Su experiencia se ha centrado en el derecho marítimo administrativo, brindando servicios legales a armadores y consultores en el registro de buques, y se ha destacado especialmente como consejero extranjero, Foreign Counsel, en transacciones de financiamiento de buques en representación de la banca y financistas internacionales en Asia y el Medio Oriente, así reconocido por sus pares en diferentes países, como se reflejan en editoriales internacionales especializadas como Chambers & Partners, Global Guide to Leading Lawyers, The Best Lawyers y The Legal 500. Miembro de la Asociación Panameña de Derecho Marítimo APADEMAR desde los años 90, fue presidente del comité organizador de Panama Maritime quinta edición en el año 2002 y la versión 11 en el año 2013. Ocupó la presidencia de APADEMAR del 2004 al 2008. Tomás ha laborado en diferentes bufetes locales que brindan servicios internacionales, donde adquirió una vasta experiencia en lo que hoy ejerce, Es miembro fundador del despacho jurídico Ávila Co. Desde el mes de julio de 2014 a la fecha, se desempeña como secretario general de la Autoridad Marítima de Panamá. Demos la bienvenida a Tomás.
Hola. Dos. ¿Por qué en los bailes típicos siempre dicen dos y no dicen uno? No entiendo. Wow, gracias Yasmina por la presentación. No tenía idea que yo había hecho tantas cosas, ¿no? Espero que Dios me dé la gracia de poder continuar haciéndolas. Las veces que he hablado en Panama Maritime lo he hecho en inglés por deferencia a nuestros invitados y lo voy a hacer nuevamente hoy, así que excusas para el público local, pero inglés es el idioma oficial o no oficial de este sector o esta industria. I want to speak to you about the role of the modern flag states in promoting global trade, because it's an issue that which we do not address. What is the importance of the international ship registries, like the Registry of Panama, and how does it affect world trade? How does it affect the good operation or the operational cost of a vessel to keep those tables and those bottles of water and everything else that we use on a very balanced but a very affordable price? Of course, you know, it's common knowledge that shipping is the backbone of global trade. Over 90% of goods are transported by sea. According to Lloyd's Register, there are currently around 70,000 vessels, over 500 registered tons sailing around the world, of which many are registered under the 29 so-called open registries, as they are known today, the international ship registries or the modern flag states. Actually, the top 3 registries in the world hold an overall tonnage of 500 million gross tons, all 3 being international registries. By the way, are there any representatives here of the Registry of Liberia or the Marshall Islands? Well, that's too bad, because I'm going to talk good about them too. According to dictionary.com, open registry is, by definition, the ship registration under a national flag available to all ships, regardless of their nationality, or a national ship registry open to all ships of all nations. The origins of the open registries, of course, Panama being the oldest one of them, dates back to the earliest 20th century, particularly in the interwar period, when the very strong protectionist policies in the United States of America were accounted for high tariffs and strict maritime commerce. Okay, forgot about that. Of course, that had negative results when entering ports of other protectionist countries, specifically from Europe. Yo puedo hacer que controlarlo para que no vaya solo. Hey, I'm not good with technology, you know. I always say that. Okay. ¿Puedo o no puedo? There we go. Okay. No, there we go. Just to let it roll, okay? So as a result, businessmen were in the need of exchanging goods with less stringent tariffs and restrictions on the registration of the vessel. Therefore, the birth of the open registries, to provide among countries with goods the need to transport them as a third country. Of course, those that oppose the open registries will always remind you of the infamous Reliance and Resolute. I want to show you that picture, not that one. There we go. The infamous Resolute or Reliance. Now, why were they infamous? These two ocean-going passenger ships owned by United American Lines registered both in Panama to avoid the application of the U.S. prohibition law, as alcohol was served on board the vessels once they left U.S. territorial waters. And, of course, in accordance with Panamanian law, they could drink. Not that way. The lack of similar prohibition regulations in Panama allowed alcohol to be served on board these vessels. However, these days are long gone, and the open registries have evolved into the modern state, or modern flag state, as referred to at the IMO level, the International Ship Registries, as their role is no longer just a simple allocation of a flag, but a series of international standards and regulations which all these registries have to adopt as states or jurisdictions to comply with the needs of the international shipping industry and peaceful and uninterrupted navigation of vessels. Furthermore, the modern flag states have been essential to the standardization of regulations applicable to all vessels and crews around the world. These regulations have ensured that safety and security are standard and that there is full transparency on who operates a given vessel and who is the person in charge overall. According to the Flag State Performance Table, as of January 2017, issued by the International Chamber of Shipping, it is the modern flag states that have ratified more international conventions than the traditional flag states. Modern flag states were usually criticized for the lack of information concerning the owners and operators of the vessels, until the entry into force of the International Safety Management Code, the ISM. That was back in 1994. This code was enacted with the purpose of ensuring safety at sea, prevent loss of life, and avoid damage to the environment and the ship, but basically to determine the accountability of a company operating a vessel negligently, which could basically disappear and no one be liable for an incident. For the first time with the ISM code, the flag states would have compulsory access to the names and addresses of the owners of the vessels, their appointment of the management companies, and even the contact details of that very person within the company who was in charge or who is in charge of the vessel. The modern flag states of the International Ship Registries embrace this code and have led numerous amendments it has had from its enactment until today. Following this code, and due to the attacks on the United States in the 9/11, the modern flag states participated actively and once again led the discussions of new regulations to avoid shipping being used for terrorism and to further entice transparency on the owners and operators of the vessel. And as a result, at IMO, the International Ship and Port Security Code was created. Today, under ISPS, all vessels above 500 gross tons must have on board a CSR, which is a continuous synopsis record. For those of you who don't know, it's basically the history of the vessel, who owns it today, who owned it yesterday, and when it changed hands, who is currently owning the vessel. They also should have an ISSC. This is the International Ship Security Certificate. A close examination will show you the name and address of the operator. And contrary to the belief of many traditional flag states, The likes of Panama, Liberia, and the Marshall Islands cooperated fully in the creation of these mechanisms. With such codes, it cannot be argued that there is no transparency in this industry, and particularly among the modern flag states. Actually, if you enter search pages such as Equisys or SeaWeb, you can find details of the vessels, including port state detentions. So I submit to you that there's no other industry more transparent than shipping. Now, keep in mind that the modern flag states are usually third countries, different from the country of export and the country of import. This avoids any issues if the country of origin and the country of destination have differences, trade differences or political differences, which to some extent would avoid the entrance into the ports of one or the other. The modern flag states are usually neutral, so there are no issues at the time of departing a port. There is also the issue that operating a vessel under one of the international ship registry usually implies lower operational costs because of competitive tax schemes offered by the said country and flexible labor regimes. However, please note that under no circumstances this is a tax-free operation, not in any of the flags. Ship owners must pay tonnage taxes and duties to the respective flags in order to be cleared to leave a port, cleared to enter a port, to be compliant with a flag state inspection or a port state inspection. Lower operational cost of a vessel means acceptable freight rates which would avoid trade to rise, even in the toughest conditions that we live in today. Now, concerning the flexible labor regime, this has also come a long way. Today, the modern flag states comply with the minimum wage standards of the International Labor Organization. And I also submit to you that they have ratified and they have led ratification of the Maritime Labor Code of 2006. Actually, the big three, as I call them, were among the first to ratify this code, being Liberia, the very first in 2006, the Marshall Islands in 2007, and Panama in 2009, bringing to shipping, among others, the concept of social security for the seafarers and protection of their well-being. There are still some of the traditional countries that have not ratified this convention. Many years have passed since the concept of the flags of convenience, which I hate to say it because you have an abbreviation, which, can I say this in public? No, right? FOC? Okay. They have evolved into the open registries and then into the reputable modern flag states or international ship registry. From bringing the referrals for criticism and for the lack of care other than the collecting of own income, we have become the referents and leaders of which other flag states do follow. The modern flag state is essential to keeping shipping in general as the backbone of global trade. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, thank you.
Muchas gracias por la presentación. Si hay preguntas en el público, favor hacerlas llegar con las cadetes. Nuestro siguiente orador es nuestro amigo Fernando Solórzano Acosta. Va a hacer una presentación sobre innovaciones en el registro panameño y los retos que presenta la industria. Fernando Solórzano es director de la Dirección General de Marina Mercante de la Autoridad Marítima de Panamá. Cuenta con más de 27 años de ser un prominente abogado. A su vez, posee varias especializaciones y maestrías en diversos ámbitos, como Derecho Privado, Marketing Estratégico de los Servicios Marítimos Portuarios, posgrado en Mediación, Convenios Laborales Marítimos, Además, cuenta con estudios en docencia superior, en donde se ha destacado como catedrático en prestigiosas universidades. Más recientemente fue coordinador de maestrías en Derecho de la Universidad Santa María la Antigua. En su brillante vida laboral ha ocupado los siguientes cargos: oficial mayor penal del Tribunal Superior del Tercer Distrito Judicial, alguacil ejecutor del Juzgado Quinto del Circuito de Chiriquí, juez encargado del Juzgado de Circuito de Bocas del Toro, asistente de magistrado de la Sala Tercera de lo Contencioso Administrativo de la Corte Suprema de Justicia, magistrado suplente del Primer Tribunal Superior del Primer Distrito Judicial de Panamá. En la antigua Dirección General de Consular y Naves fue jefe de asesoría legal, subdirector y director general. A partir del año 2000 es nombrado como director general de Marina Mercante en la Autoridad Marítima de Panamá. Durante el periodo comprendido entre 2007 al 2009, donde asumió el cargo de administrador de la Autoridad Marítima de Panamá y ministro para Asuntos Marítimos, lideró importantes acuerdos y políticas para beneficio del área marítima, entre los que se destacaron la Segunda Estrategia Marítima Nacional y las leyes que actualizaron y modernizaron el marco jurídico en materia de marina mercante, comercio marítimo, procedimientos judiciales marítimos y la Ley General de Puertos. Demos la bienvenida a Fernando.
Muy buenos días. Muchas gracias al comité organizador por esta invitación. Me corresponde hablarles sobre las iniciativas de la Administración Marítima panameña en cuanto a la sistematización. Un elemento común en todas las actividades que en el año 2017 involucran al Registro Panameño de Buques es la celebración del centenario del Servicio de Registro Internacional de Buques. Y en el marco de esta conferencia es importante destacar la evolución de la plataforma que la República de Panamá ha utilizado para la provisión de este maravilloso sistema de competitividad comercial que ha permitido a través de los años brindar soporte a la navegación bajo la bandera panameña. Mediante una estructura simple que implicaba una legislación innovadora acompañada de oficinas de marina mercante en los principales puertos de las ciudades de Panamá y Colón y de oficinas consulares en las más importantes ciudades del mundo vinculadas a las operaciones marítimas, el Servicio Abierto de Panamá se impuso por ofrecer seguridad documentaria y registral, el respaldo de una plataforma legislativa comercial moderna y una adecuada legislación vinculada al negocio marítimo bajo el modelo de gestión directa del Estado panameño que a través de los años ha administrado su registro internacional de buques como un auténtico estado de abanderamiento. Podría asegurarles que llegamos a ser el primer registro, tanto en número de buques como en tonelaje mundial, suministrando un servicio netamente manual, con trámites mano a mano, para fortalecer la seguridad documental y en su momento la ritualidad que conllevaba la fe registral a través del servicio consular fue el más importante elemento para defender este sistema. Pero los tiempos cambiaron, tanto la introducción de la sistematización en los procesos privados y gubernamentales como la inminente reducción de los costos en los trámites en respuesta a las constantes crisis económicas que acosan el negocio marítimo desde finales de la década del 90, así como la entrada en vigencia de importantes regulaciones internacionales sobre seguridad marítima que exigieron del Estado de abanderamiento mayor control documentario, nos obligaron a dar pasos acelerados para proveer un servicio rápido y eficiente y seguro a través de la sistematización. Los primeros retos de esta naturaleza que enfrentó el registro panameño de buques se dieron en la aplicación del código ISM o el código IGS, como se entiende en español, y las enmiendas que en el año 1995 fueron incorporadas al convenio STCW 78 sobre documentación de gente de mar y que entraron en vigencia a finales de la década del 90. Luego siguió la implementación acelerada de las regulaciones contenidas en el código ISPS en el año 2003 y de allí podríamos decir que la provisión de todos los servicios vinculados a marina mercante dejaron de estar limitados a los meros trámites registrales para concentrarse en un mayor control técnico de la flota, involucrando la necesidad de eficiencia y rapidez exigida por los usuarios. En el año 2006 se desarrolló una plataforma de modernización del registro dirigida a automatizar todos los procesos que encerraban las actividades de registro de naves y titulación de marinos y sus servicios conexos. Sin embargo, podemos decir que este incipiente proyecto estaba a años luz de los requisitos que exige y necesita el negocio. Su uso técnico se basó en la premisa de que el mayor volumen de procesamiento era realizado por la Oficina de Registro de Buques en Panamá y las soluciones satelitares alternas al registro de naves, tales como las inspecciones anuales de seguridad marítimas, las inspecciones sobre estado rector de puerto, la provisión de documentación técnica emitida por las oficinas de Segumar hasta ese momento solamente en la ciudad de Nueva York y en Panamá, la documentación de gente de mar emitida por los centros regionales de documentación o las certificaciones emitidas por las organizaciones reconocidas o por las organizaciones de protección reconocidas, así como la documentación consular y cualquier otro tipo de trámite emitido por el registro panameño de buques, no fueron programadas en esta plataforma y se dejaron como soluciones aisladas que no fueron conectadas al proceso fundamental del negocio que se tramitaba a través de una llave conocida como la llave PKI y por lo tanto esos trámites estaban distantes de cualquier posibilidad de aprovechamiento de la información para la toma de decisiones dentro del registro. Lo anterior, más crítico aún, si tomamos en cuenta que a las gestiones del estado de abanderamiento de Panamá se nos anexaron las de control de estado rector de puerto, las de control de estado ribereño, que implicaban el posesionamiento de los buques, la búsqueda y rescate, la seguridad pública, el control de tráfico, la inscripción de títulos de propiedad y de hipoteca de los buques, las operaciones náuticas relacionadas con las instalaciones portuarias y el resto de las atribuciones que tiene hoy día la Autoridad Marítima de Panamá. A través de los años se implementaron importantes mejoras a aquella plataforma, pero un diagnóstico reciente nos refleja que aún persisten problemas tales como la ausencia de una estructura de acceso unificado a la información. Varias direcciones poseen hoy día información independiente. Hay usuarios y departamentos con sus propios conjuntos aislados de información e incluso procesos sin normalizar y múltiples plataformas de datos. Para la actual administración de la Autoridad Marítima de Panamá, la clave de toda modernización debe fomentar la innovación a través del desarrollo y la mejora de nuevos módulos alternos que permitan que toda la información pueda ser visible, aprovechada, medida, cuantificada, compartida e intercambiada entre sí para el conocimiento y el dominio del negocio, reutilizando los conocimientos existentes en los sistemas que ya hemos contratado y modernizándolos a través de una gestión de proyectos adecuada. Todos los servicios externalizados y subcontratados, ya sean tecnología. Todos los servicios externalizados, ya sean subcontratados o no, para el desarrollo personalizado o para la adquisición de herramientas y soluciones, deben cumplir con un denominador común. La Autoridad Marítima de Panamá debe ser autosuficiente y autónoma en su uso, dominio y explotación, y deberán cumplir las especificaciones que permitan su interconexión como parte de un ecosistema único que integre todos los programas que manejan cada una de las direcciones de negocio, sin islas de información, con mecanismos de trazabilidad, expedición de documentación remota, rapidez y eficiencia, cobro en línea, reducción del personal integrado a la expedición de servicios, desburocratización, cultura paperless, fuentes de información al público bajo los amplios parámetros de transparencia e incluso que se puedan proveer los servicios en línea de tal suerte que el usuario no tenga que depender necesariamente del trámite físico en nuestras instalaciones, sino que se le permita aplicar y recibir su documentación de la misma forma que se compra online en los establecimientos comerciales. Todo el equipo directivo de la Autoridad Marítima de Panamá está comprometido actualmente en este camino, siendo conscientes que en nuestro liderazgo tenemos la obligación y la necesidad de cumplirle a nuestros clientes y a la comunidad internacional. Siendo conscientes de esto, podemos en este caso indicar muy claramente que las estadísticas de nuestro registro actualmente, como lo han mencionado los antiguos expositores, determinan que a la fecha actual tenemos 222.6 toneladas de registro con más de 8.094 buques de más de 100 toneladas de registro bruto y que mantener estas cifras no ha sido fácil, pues ha implicado desarrollar en conjunto con los panameños y extranjeros involucrados tanto en firmas de abogados, compañías técnicas, oficinas consulares, intermediarios o brokers, constantes participaciones en foros, organismos y organizaciones y una política de puertas abiertas para recibir aportes y consideraciones relevantes que coadyuven al crecimiento y conservación de la flota. No son fáciles los cambios en una organización tan grande como la panameña, pero la visión del negocio de la actual administración ha permitido a la Autoridad Marítima de Panamá generar importantes cambios y actualizaciones en el mecanismo de servicio bajo el prisma de que el registro panameño de buques, incluyendo buques, gente de mar y documentación registral, es un negocio global. Por ello, como resultado de la Comisión de Transparencia, se ha planificado, primero que todo, la automatización de pagos y cobros a nivel mundial. Se conceptualizó en esencia dentro de los primeros estudios sobre el tema de la modernización y la sistematización en la actual administración, el uso de una sola cuenta para recibir fondos recaudados a través del sistema consular, con las principales servicios y ventajas. Primeramente, la consolidación automática de saldos en cuentas bancarias de los consulados en el exterior, de tal suerte que no hubiese múltiples cuentas por cuantos consulados existían en el mundo, sino una sola cuenta bancaria total que llevara a cabo una contabilidad total para acumulación automática de los saldos en un solo banco concentrador, así como también que la propia administración pudiese tener un informe al día de dónde provenían los recaudos y básicamente cómo ingresaban los diferentes pagos que realizaban los usuarios de la flota. Hemos trabajado también en las primeras certificaciones electrónicas de seguridad a cargo de la oficina de Segumar, lo que nosotros denominamos el iSegumar. Esto nos ha permitido una total disponibilidad del sistema en línea. Las empresas navieras, los armadores, los abogados o tramitadores pueden hacer sus solicitudes de certificados automáticamente desde la web, y este sistema se acompaña de un servicio de vigilancia de seguridad donde las unidades de Segumar y el Departamento de Navegación y Seguridad Marítima son notificadas en línea de la solicitud de la aplicación y los documentos adjuntos son verificados en línea y las aprobaciones y aplicaciones son igualmente notificadas en línea. Esto nos da a nosotros una eficiencia segura y expedita, de tal suerte que tenemos una notificación del recibo de pago en línea mediante la plataforma de pago electrónico y las emisiones a los clientes de sus certificados se hacen con elementos de seguridad tales como sellos digitales o signos de protección. Otro hito importante lo constituye lo que el administrador de la Autoridad Marítima de Panamá mencionó esta mañana, que es el sistema de aplicación automática de gente de mar. Un sistema basado en la alta disponibilidad y tecnología de seguridad, donde los certificados transitorios marinos pueden ser emitidos e impresos por el consulado o los agentes broker en una impresora convencional, y hay por lo tanto comunicación en los procedimientos privados a través de la clave de cifrado del PKI y los protocolos de web, y por tanto el certificado transitorio, así como también la libreta de marino, el Seaman Book, combinan al menos 33 elementos de seguridad para evitar falsificaciones. Por otro lado, el sistema también permite la vigilancia y la transparencia consular y la seguridad de las transacciones, de tal suerte que la delegación que se otorga a través de esta llave está basada en la fiabilidad del sistema. Hay informes automáticos, el consulado puede monitorear en línea los procedimientos que son ejecutados inmediatamente por los brokers, y tenemos, por tanto, un sistema que le denominamos sistema intuitivo. La base del proceso es paso a paso, reduciendo la posibilidad de errores con la participación de un centro de llamada 24/7 para asistencia y el entrenamiento y asistencia remota, tanto en español como en inglés. En el caso del registro de buques y certificaciones, hay también importantes proyectos en desarrollo. La estandarización, primeramente que todo, la estandarización en breve plazo de toda la documentación emitida, tanto a los buques en el formato A4. Lo segundo, el sistema electrónico de pago en línea. Lo tercero, la adquisición de una nube o web para la provisión de los servicios marítimos. Cuarto, la integración de la data que actualmente manejamos con motivo del sistema LRIT a otras gestiones de seguridad marítima para inteligencia del negocio, para búsqueda y rescate, para maniobras de buques en las aguas nacionales, para las detenciones, para el enforzamiento de la ley nacional e internacional, para el control de la contaminación, para la investigación de accidentes y para los preanálisis a los que estamos obligados para una debida diligencia. El desarrollo de una plataforma global de inspecciones que va a integrar las inspecciones anuales de seguridad con las inspecciones ejecutadas por los estados rectores de puerto, los servicios de registro y las gestiones de atraque y desatraque de las naves dentro de la República de Panamá. Y finalmente, la implementación de los certificados electrónicos, tanto los emitidos por nuestras oficinas internacionales como los que se emiten en nombre de la República de Panamá por las organizaciones reconocidas y por las organizaciones de protección reconocidas. Una observación final a este paso, a esta intervención, es indicarles lo siguiente. Así como han cambiado los tiempos del proceso meramente manual a la sistematización total de casi todos los procesos involucrados en el registro, es inminente que en su debido momento debamos discutir una reestructuración del negocio, por cuanto la Autoridad Marítima de Panamá ha planteado a nivel del Gobierno Nacional ir asumiendo una serie de funciones que están actualmente otorgadas al sistema consular, porque el día de mañana, cuando logremos una sistematización total del servicio, los pagos en línea, la emisión en línea y el otorgamiento de certificaciones en las propias oficinas de los aplicantes, de los usuarios aplicantes, no va a ser necesario la existencia de oficinas consulares en el exterior. Cada uno de los que estamos involucrados en el registro se convertirán en broker del registro, de tal suerte que serán promotores, y las oficinas que la Autoridad Marítima de Panamá mantenga en el exterior serán oficinas para brindar soporte a los buques frente a las detenciones de buques o a las relaciones directas que se tengan que hacer con las autoridades nacionales de Estado Rector de Puerto. Eso nos impone la modernidad. Ocultar esa verdad es simplemente evitar la modernidad, de tal suerte que pensémoslo en esa forma y la Autoridad Marítima de Panamá está dispuesto a discutirlo y a proponerlo a la faz nacional y a la faz mundial. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias a Fernando por su presentación y a ustedes por mantenerse con nosotros. Sabemos que es una hora difícil, solo nos queda una presentación. Nuestro último orador es Greg Chase. Va a ser una presentación sumamente interesante. Es sobre los retos del financiamiento de buques, the challenges of ship financing. Greg Chase es socio de Reed Smith en Nueva York. Greg advises clients in a broad range of ship finance and shipping-related private equity matters. He represents major lenders, operating companies, and equity investors in connection with cross-border and domestic transactions, including syndicated and bilateral secured loan facilities, workouts and debt restructuring, leasing, joint ventures, and other private equity and corporate transactions for the shipping industry. Greg also represents clients in connection with international commerce, shipping transactions, including construction contracts and multi-vessel construction programs, complex vessel charter arrangements, and the sale and purchase of marine assets. Greg has acted for lenders in some of the larger ship finance transactions in the market. Greg holds a BA from St. Lawrence University, summa cum laude, in government and history, as well as a law degree from Cornell Law School. He is a director of New York Maritime Inc., as well as a director and founding member of Young Shipping Professionals, New York. Please welcome Greg.
Thank you for that very kind introduction. Let's see if I can figure out the clicker. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here. This week is actually starting out very well. I woke up this morning and learned that we're having a blizzard in New York, apparently. So it's a much better situation to be here this morning. Also, as the last speaker right before lunch, perhaps people won't hold it against me too much if I get a little nervous and speak too quickly. But I am pleased and very honored to have been invited to address this conference on the topic of ship finance and to be part of this esteemed panel. Certainly, it's been an area quite fraught with challenge over the last several years, but also, most importantly, I think we're beginning to see a great deal of opportunity on the horizon, at least from my perspective in New York. I'm glad to have a chance to share my perspectives with you. Just a quick word about Reed Smith. We are a global law firm with about 1,700 lawyers in 26 offices worldwide. I'm a member of the shipping group. We have about 120 lawyers on a global basis. In New York, we are about 10. I think we're the fastest growing transactional shipping team in New York at this time. Our practice covers the full range of traditional ship finance disciplines. My introduction covered lots of it. But we've also been very active very recently for new clients, new types of clients who are making investments in shipping for the first time. We've been quite active in the sale and purchase of distressed loans, as well as for private equity who are investing in shipping. So I was invited to discuss the challenges in ship finance. Of course, I'm a lawyer, not a banker or an investor. I'm certainly glad to speak about the technical aspects of what we do to anybody here, but I suspect it would be much more interesting for this audience to hear about the kinds of transactions we are seeing for shipping in New York these days. I think our team is at the cutting edge of capital formation for shipping. So I'm glad to talk about the types of transactions we are seeing and to offer some thoughts about what this may mean for the availability of ship finance in the medium term. It's certainly difficult to talk about ship finance without spending some time looking at how we got to where we are now. As many of you are aware, market forces have led to a steep decline in the availability of bank finance. A little bit on our firm. That's my overview. But the good news is, even as bank finance has declined, new sources of capital have been coming into the market. This transition is paving the way for more sophisticated company balance sheets and complex transactions at the top of the market, as well as a broader menu of finance options across the board for the industry. The finance industry for shipping is maturing to a new level very quickly and right before our eyes. When coupled with early signs of recovery in certain sectors, I'm optimistic that the difficulty in finding finance will start to get a little easier in the near term. Today, the sources of capital include banks, of course, but also alternative finance providers, private equity, and even Chinese banks and leasing companies. So to set the stage, let's spend a moment talking about the decline of bank finance for shipping. European banks, traditionally the largest source of capital for the industry over the last generation, have significantly reduced their capacity to lend. For example, the English banks are essentially out of the market. Our team was active for the successful bidders for a majority of the Lloyd's debt out of London. RBS has famously exited the business and is selling down its portfolio as well. On the continent, in countries such as Germany, Petrofin calculates that German lenders have reduced their shipping portfolios by some 41%, from 154 billion to 91 billion between 2010 and 2015. This is particularly significant because German lenders previously held nearly a quarter of the global shipping debt. Of course, there are probably lots of factors that affect this, but two factors in particular I think are particularly striking. Certainly, we've had low earnings in shipping. We had some slides earlier about the Baltic Dry Index. I think my numbers are close to what Jens presented. And of course, increasing bank regulations have also contributed to the situation. On the Baltic Dry Index, the Baltic Dry didn't hit its lowest level until 2016. Obviously, it was falling throughout the initial part of the recession, but stayed low and hit its lowest point last year. That shows how protracted the downturn has been. Shipping companies, of course, have reported losses throughout this period. For only the second time in the company's history, even Maersk reported an annual loss in 2016. It's not surprising then that banks such as Deutsche Bank announced losses on shipping loans in 2016, tripling from the year before, up to 346 million euros. Moreover, the banking regulatory environment has become hostile to shipping. Shipping loan portfolios have been a particular area of focus for asset quality review and stress testing. The Basel III framework, which has come into effect, not to mention the specter of Basel IV, have put increasing pressure on banks to reduce the term of new loans and to increase pricing spreads to cover the higher costs of capital needed to facilitate lending in the space. This slide shows the relative decline of European banks making loans into the industry. The red line, of course, is the European lenders as a whole. Asian Pacific lenders have actually increased their participation in the market, but notwithstanding the increased activity of the Asian banks, overall, there's been a decline in capacity. The problems caused by the relative lack of bank finance would be one thing if the number of ships in the world stayed the same. But the size of the world fleet has increased substantially in the same time frame. We can blame private equity in part for that. This is something I'll touch on later. There are, of course, different sources of data for this sort of thing, but one UN survey we examined suggests that the global fleet for bulkers, tankers, and container vessels expanded by about 4.2% between 2011 and 2015. During the same period, the aggregate amount of bank debt for shipping decreased by about 15%, from 403.7 billion to 343.8 billion between 2010 and 2015. So while the size of the world fleet expanded, the aggregate amount of bank debt in the world decreased by approximately 60 billion. This slide's our attempt to show the gap between the increase in vessels and the decrease in bank capital available. Even though Asian banks are expanding their activity, the aggregate amount of shipping debt in the market is less. The phenomenon has contributed to a funding gap. So, what is filling the funding gap? Well, private equity remains a key player in ship finance. Since 2008, private equity funds have invested in excess of $20 billion in the shipping industry. However, due to the lack of reporting for private equity, this figure is merely an estimate and most likely a dramatic underestimate of the total value private equity has invested in the space. Contrary to popular speculation, private equity actually remains quite active in ship finance, at least from our perspective. It is, of course, widely known that the first wave of private equity was badly burned by placing new building orders in the wake of the recession and likely further exacerbated the downturn. More recent transactions, however, and the ones we are tending to see, reflect a more measured and rational approach Often, private equity is co-investing with more traditional vessel owners in a joint venture structure. Capital markets are still relevant to filling the funding gap, and there's been a fair amount of follow-on offering activity for companies that are already public. There's also been a fair amount of high-yield debt transactions and private placements of both debt and equity. These deals are yet another way that private investment funds investing in institutional capital have made an impact on ship finance recently. But the amount of capital raised via IPOs has, of course, declined since the recession, as demonstrated by this chart. I would say that even though the capital markets have been tepid at best, as a general matter, and assuming a proposed transaction is one where there is some demand, perhaps high yield, it is probably easier to get capital markets transactions done in New York than ever before. One excellent outcome of the boom and bust cycle around the recession has been the advent of the private equity binge, is the fact that investment professionals across Wall Street are now very closely attuned to shipping and following the industry closely. But private equity and capital markets are not filling the funding gap either. What's another component? Very significantly, the rise of alternative finance is affecting the changing menu of finance options for shipping. It is likely the case that the amount of alternative finance is relatively small in comparison to the overall funding gap, but it is carving out a very real and, in my view, sustainable niche in the market. Alternative capital providers offer a diverse array of sophisticated financing arrangements for ship owners and operators, including senior loans, often at higher interest rates than banks would typically provide, junior loans, preferred equity, and sale and leaseback transactions. There is often a private equity overlay with alternative finance. Many of these finance providers are dedicated funds of larger asset managers, which have capital allocations that prefer different investment theses relating to shipping. A very popular focus for many of these providers are sale and leaseback transactions. Notwithstanding the overall increasing sophistication of private equity and institutional capital for shipping, however, it often seems like these alternative finance providers, if not at the relationship manager level, perhaps at the institutional and back office or credit underwriting levels, are really learning the intricacies of ship finance for the first time. I often find myself advising clients on the pros and cons, for example, of different flag states, in a way that I never had to do with banking clients. Investors, of course, favor flag states with low cost, global reach, and efficient service. I can certainly report that the Panamanian flag remains very attractive to these types of investors, but there's certainly a great deal of competition. That looks like just part of my slide, but we'll go with it. Asian banks and leasing companies are certainly growing their presence as well in the alternative finance space. This past year, I traveled in China and met with some 20 different banks and leasing companies, and across the board, it seemed there was a strong appetite for doing transactions with Western counterparties. Minxing Leasing in particular has been very active on the conference circuit in the last 18 months or so, talking about their capacity to do deals with Western owners. This slide shows the strength and relevance of Chinese leasing companies within China. My takeaway from this slide, and in conjunction with the meetings I had last year, is that these funds have been so active in Asia that they have essentially maxed out the Asian market and now need to look to other markets in order to stay busy to invest their capital allocations. At this point, I'll digress into being a lawyer for just a couple of minutes. In this alternative finance space, particularly with the emphasis on sale and leaseback transactions, I've been particularly struck at the amount of basic advising we've had to do on the various risks inherent in leasing transactions. When a vessel lessee in a sale-leaseback transaction files for bankruptcy in the United States, of course that would never happen, unless the lease is properly done, the court may decide that a lessor does not retain the economic benefits of property ownership and that the lessor is nothing more than an unsecured creditor. I suspect that most people doing transactions like this outside the United States don't think their English law finance charters could possibly end up in a U.S. bankruptcy court. But the catch there is that U.S. bankruptcy jurisdiction is extremely easy to achieve, and a struggling lessee could simply open an account, possibly with a law firm on retainer, to establish jurisdiction sufficient for the bankruptcy court. Of course, if a debtor files for bankruptcy in the United States, becomes subject to the jurisdiction of the court, the U.S. bankruptcy court can impose the so-called global automatic stay, which is intended to prevent creditors worldwide from enforcing against collateral. In any event, it appears to me we are now turning a corner and that the prospects for ship finance are brightening. Even though European bank portfolios continue to decline, there are more alternative and innovative sources of capital than ever before. Catch up my slides. Market conditions may improve as the pace of global fleet expansion slows. In 2016, we heard some commentary on this a few moments ago, the rate of global fleet expansion dropped to its slowest pace in over a decade. Perhaps freight rates will increase as a function of improving market conditions in the wider economy. In 2016, new orders at shipyards were at their lowest point in the past 30 years, according to Clarkson's research. There was a decline in new building pricing, but owners showed some restraint and did not plunge back into the market. This trend has continued in 2017. The total number of new building orders is down 83% in January 2017 as compared to January 2016. There's been an increase in demolition, of course. And I think in conjunction with improvements in the Baltic, in the BDI and towards the end of 2016, we're starting to see new capital flows in the first quarter of 2017, which I'm hoping are a harbinger of good things to come. This slide shows the blip up and the Baltic Dry Index towards the end of 2016. And trailing right behind in the first quarter of 2017, we had lots of calls from private equity who were looking to buy dry bulk vessels, secondhand this time, in the wake of that uptick. Also, we've been seeing more industry consolidation. This slide talks about industry consolidation in the container space. So, to summarize, anecdotally, it seems we have more clients looking to provide capital with different investment approaches than ever before. The range of capital sources now available can only be good for the industry, so long as we don't finance new buildings. As we approach the end of the first quarter, it seems that activity has been picking up significantly. This leads me to be very optimistic about the future. With hope, we are through the worst of the downturn, at least from a finance availability perspective. And hopefully owners will find that the increasing number of sources of capital will make it easier for ship owners to find finance in the near term. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Si tienen preguntas adicionales, tenemos una aquí en el podio for Mr. Ravi Mehrotra. How could we change from industry approach to service approach in shipping? Any examples? Yes. How could we change from industry approach to service approach in shipping? Any examples?
Someone who asked this is a very intelligent and very good question. This is what is the system we have to adopt, that we are the link in the system. So customer satisfaction will become the uppermost. And we have to remove our feeling of being a ship owner. Basically, the future merchant shipping is nothing but a glorified trucking business. This is what we have to adopt ourselves. And most of the people are going into it. That's the only way you can run in shipping, because you will not be part of independent ship owners as we know it now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more questions from the floor? If not, then allow me just a minute to hand you your certificates. you can join me here for the picture. Yes. On behalf of the organization, thank you very much for Yes. Thank you very much for joining us on behalf of the organization. And this is for you. Pictures of the expanded panorama. You'll enjoy. Thank you. Por favor, tenga para usted. Disfrute.
Gracias.
Venga para usted. And this is for you. Pictures of the expanded panorama. Okay. Gracias al patrocinio de Panamá Pacífico, podrán disfrutar del almuerzo que está ubicado saliendo del área de exhibición a mano derecha. Se les agradece presentar el boleto correspondiente al almuerzo del día de hoy que debieron haberles entregado en el registro. Al finalizar el almuerzo pueden pasar al puesto de registro para retirar sus respectivas carpetas por cortesía de Panama Maritime XIII. Buenas tardes.